So if I perhaps talk about 3 projects that don't do any of those things, but are very exciting. There are 3 main artists, Irish artists, who I think have submersed themselves very well in collaborative programs with institutes or with individual scientists. And the 3 today I'm talking about are Dorothy Cross, Grace Weir, and Kathy Fitzgerald. So many of you might already know the work of Dorothy Cross. Through Cross's work, there is an inquiry into the symmetry and symbiotic nature of existence with human beings through ritual, symbolism, and material. She sort of is drawn to animals where there is the potential of androgyny and symbolism. So, for example, this work here, Cry, this is a work that Dorothy, when she was in residence in the States, did. And at the time, there was these very loud American debates about cryogenics and life suspension. And her response to this work was to produce an installation of frozen snakes inside a visual art space inside a freezer. Because she was very, very interested in not just the science, but also the human response to the science, and particularly that raging debate that was going on in the States. So her work tends to, walk the grey area between the known and unknown, between inquiry and mystery. And, she's currently working at the moment out in the Melanesian Islands in the Pacific. And she's working with just very traditional shark callers, where she's learning the rituals around shark calling. Basically, it's a small group of individual fishermen, I guess, who go to the Pacific and sing songs and have different rituals to lure the sharks to the surface. But perhaps one of her most interesting projects as well was one called Medici. And in 2003, she undertook a 3-year-long project with her brother, Tom Cross. So she has a brother, and he was professor of zoology in University College Cork. And it was basically an immersion into and research concerning the collective findings of the amateur marine biologist Maud Jane Delap. So this is a picture of Maud and her sisters. And Delap was very interesting. She lived in a very, very small, isolated part of Ireland. Her father was a keen amateur naturalist, and he really provided the enthusiasm for Delap of inquiry and basically nature around the island. And after her parents died, she remained unwed. She just stayed on the island, maybe 10 people living there, and right up until her death. But she became really famous, and she was probably, in her research, in her serious scientific research, which was conducted around the sea and looking at marine biology in the area. And she was one of the first in, I think, the world. She collected and bred Cyane lamarcae and Chrysaro isosceles jellyfish in bell jars. So, she was one of the first people to actually breed jellyfish in captivity and study them and really look into the structure, and for an amateur, female at this time, it was very good. And so through what Dorothy and her brother did was, they did an installation and a film of the findings of Maud Delap, so all her scientific research. And because it was this allegiance between zoology, marine biology, and Dorothy as a working artist, it had both a scientific and art context, and was a very interesting collaboration between, a scientist and an artist. And there was also, in terms of art, there was also a very interesting correlation between the fact that it was a brother and sister team reinvestigating the sisters living on this ancient island. So that was also very, very interesting. And through the work, Dorothy reawakens the presence of Maud, this amateur scientist. She was completely fascinated and investigated the jellyfish. So through the installation, we see these very wraith-like images of jellyfish and the artist floating in the sea amongst the species. So if I just move on one. So this is the artist around the island, floating. And I think it really was trying to look at Maud Delap, the amateur scientist, and in an artistic response, but also seriously look at the data that she collected. And it's like through the ethereal movement of the jellyfish, one is reminded of the solitary movement of Maud across the island and around the shore, collecting species for examination. And the brother and sister team of Tom and Dorothy, they made trips to Australia to examine the, try and pronounce this, the Cryonex fleckerae, considered to be one of the most deadliest species in the world. And throughout the artwork, which was an installation, it was basically her brother, Tom, the professor of zoology, outlines with meticulous detail the devastating stings of this jellyfish and the mechanics of jet propulsion. And during the film, it was all brought together, the scientific data and the visual art data was brought together through a narration throughout this piece of Maud's original findings and actually using the script. And it was just very fitting that at the end of the piece, the work was presented back in the island where there's now no one living, or very few people living, in the church where the Maud Delap's, the amateur scientist's father, used to preach. So it was like this beautiful scientific investigation, and because the father initiated this passion for things around them, for looking at science in detail in the marine biology, it was a wonderful circle was created. Mm-hmm. So we move on. So this is an artist called Grace Weir. And Grace Weir, she is an artist. She has no scientific background whatsoever. But she's very, very interested with the larger questions in cosmology, with superstring theory, relativity, and bending space-time. So this is another collaborative piece where she worked with a physicist in Ireland's only observatory, Dunsink Observatory, Dr. Ian Elliott. And basically, she's very interested. She really, really immerses herself in the science. And again, for Irish artists, that's still unusual to do so. So with this collaboration, the 5 video pieces, if I go to the next one perhaps, yeah. Weir follows the movement of a dust particle in real time through Dunsink Observatory in the piece, Dust Defying Gravity. The movement is interrupted, a key element of Weir's work, by the antiquated devices and books located in the observatory. The intent to explain the science is indicated by accompanying texts and drawings, like this, if you go back. No, can't go back. Just as we saw. For example, and We're in Darkness, again, it's this very interesting collaboration where you had all the scientific data clearly explained in the piece, and you had the artistic response, united within the work. So the scientist Ian Elliott, he practically demonstrated the superstring theory using paper and scissors. And akin to Cross, the artist we just saw, the work is demonstrative of scientific theory, but ponders its application through real time. There is an occupation with sharing, understanding, and applied demonstration. The use of the old scholarly room and location inside the antiquated observatory contrasts past pursuits of cosmological inquiry with contemporary interpretations. Really, Dunsink is a very old observatory in Ireland. It was built in 1750. And there is, in capturing real time with modern technology within this very old space where lots of manuscripts and old books, there's a sort of an interesting Janus-like approach to capturing the science now and understanding, contemporary interpretations of that science.